Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. My free hit is active ahead of Game Week 34 and in today's video we're going to take a look at my very first draft and some of the key players that I'm currently considering. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, I know the main purpose of today's video is free hit 34, and we'll discuss that very shortly, but I thought I would also briefly review Game Week 33, because I think, as you can see by the state of my team, I definitely need the free hit in Game Week 34. And there are a few things I want to discuss because it was quite an eventful game week. I actually scored 45 points in Game Week 33, or I'm on 45 points. I obviously still have Gusto and Palmer to play with Petrovic on the bench. I would love to know down below, at the time of you watch this, how many points are you on? Who do you have left to play? And is that enough for a green arrow, or are you currently on a red? Not many players actually returned in Game Week 33, but some players went very big, the likes of Isak, Haaland, Gvardiol, Gordon. So it really depends, I suppose, on if you own some of those players that went very big. Just as a bit of context for my team, and it kind of brings us on to the first eventful thing of Game Week 33, I brought in Foden and João Pedro this week for Darwin and Saka. Because I'm free hitting this week, I didn't need Darwin and Saka. I wanted to use both my free transfers, and I needed to build towards bench boost 37 and also the back end of the season as well. Now, obviously, we weren't sure if Foden was going to start. Then we get the news ahead of deadline that 3 or 4 of the very reliable leakers all suggesting that Foden is going to start. All of them have been accurate pretty much, if not every single time this season. So I shared that information with you, as I always will. And to be honest, even if I don't get perfectly reliable information, I'll try to share that with you because I think it's best you have the information and you decide what to do with it. And obviously, I believed it enough to make the move. I sold Saka for Foden. I wouldn't have made that if I thought it was unreliable. But obviously, Foden didn't start and he didn't get any minutes. Now, as to what happened, I genuinely have no idea. Because what we were told on the day is that there was a late change made and that Foden was meant to start. But as of this evening, literally as I'm recording this, I just looked on Twitter. And actually, Peppers said that there was no plan for Foden to start. He was never meant to start. And he actually ended the press conference by saying there's a lot of incorrect leaks around. So it may well be the case, despite the fact that, by the way, all of these people get their information from different sources. Pep may be onto the fact that stuff's getting leaked, and it may be that incorrect information is being spread around to members of the staff to maybe try and work out who's the person leaking or who are the people that are leaking. Or it could just be a lot of incorrect information being spread around by one person that gets around to various people. I have absolutely no idea. And so moving forward, I don't know what the plan is for us. I don't know if we now suddenly just stop trusting leaks altogether, especially associated with Manchester City, if we're just a little bit more cautious, if this was just a one-off. I am just like you guys, right? I'm not the person with the source. I'm not the one with the leak. I just share to you what I think is reliable information. But I will apologize for my part in that. If you watch my streams and you trust me and you made a move based on the information it was wrong, I do apologize. I just would always share with you. I'd rather share with you and it be wrong than keep it to myself. So that was the situation we're in. But as you can see, I made the move. Interestingly, and very luckily, I'm actually up based on that move. So if I hadn't sold Saka for Foden, I wouldn't have actually got Garnacho's four points off the bench. So in a very lucky turn of events, I suppose, I actually managed to be up on points. But I do also think it's very unlucky that Foden didn't start, because I think if he did, we probably would have got some decent points from that game. Realistically, looking at my team, though, it was kind of a disappointing game week overall, despite the fact that I'm on a green. That was due to just one man, really, and we'll discuss that in a second. But Ait-Nouri, along with Foden, didn't feature. I then got Van Heck off the bench for Ait-Nouri, and whilst at one point it looked like he might have got a clean sheet, Brighton didn't really deserve one. Burnley were all over them for most of the game, so I don't think I deserved a clean sheet there, only got the 2 points. Bradley went off injured just after half-time. I know Garnacho got me an assist, but he went off at half-time as well. Looks like there might be an issue between him and Ten Hag. Salah very disappointing. Son went off before 60 minutes after an absolute shocker of a performance, and not a particularly good performance for like the 3rd or 4th game in a row now. Very disappointing there. João Pedro, I know he can be a bit unreliable as well as a player, but 2 points against Burnley, I was hoping for a little bit more as well. Luckily, Darwin didn't do anything either, as per Saka too, so the 2 players that I sold didn't necessarily punish me. Raya getting 1 point as well. I kept him rather than selling him because I was like, do you know what, I want to hang on to an Arsenal defender. So, I mean, I look at the team and it is a bit of a mess, other than Haaland delivered for me, and I'm glad I captained him and not Salah. We did get the information that Haaland was starting, and that was enough for us to trust him with the armband. And if you went against Haaland, obviously that didn't go particularly well this week, but in previous weeks, it definitely has. I will just say, Haaland accumulated crazy data in that game, but he didn't look good, very, very good once again. I mean, I can't remember the last game that I watched Haaland, and I was like, that was a good performance. So It will become a question maybe towards the back end of the season. Apart from in game week 37, do we actually captain Haaland every single game week, or do we look to go against him? This game week shows, though, even when he doesn't play perfectly, because he's on pens and because he does get a lot of chances, he can still definitely get a big score without playing well. But really, the hero, and the final thing I wanted to say on game week 33, I love Alexander Isak. My wildcard 30 has been very successful, but when I look at it, it's pretty much down to two things. Some jammy Garnacho auto sub points because I've got 18 points from him across the last 3 weeks because I've got his 14 pointer a few weeks ago. And then Alexander Isak. He's got me something like, I don't know, was it like 6 or 7 attacking returns in 3 or 4 weeks? The man is just carrying my wildcard team. And it's one of the main reasons that I'm doing so well is because if I didn't wildcard in 30, I wouldn't have Isak. I might have had Solanke in there, to be fair, and Solanke's been doing quite well. But Isak has just been delivering, and to get another brace, I mean, he's just unbelievable. I would go as far as saying I think Isak is the most talented, most complete forward in the Prem. And I'd love to know down below if you disagree. Do you think it's Tony? Do you think it's Haaland? Maybe Ollie Watkins? And by the way, how does Ollie Watkins just keep scoring? But Alexander Isak, when I watch him, I'm like, this is a seriously special footballer. And if you ignore FPL for a second, he's just remarkable. He's fast, he dribbles well, his movement off the ball is incredible. I think his football IQ is up there with some of the best. He even presses pretty well too. It's like, there's very little that I see Isak can't do. He's just absolutely brilliant. And as you can tell, it's because I've owned him over the last weeks. I've been watching him like a hawk. I've watched every Newcastle game. And like I say, even off the ball, even when he's not doing what he does best, which is scoring goals, he's still just absolutely brilliant. And I wouldn't be surprised if Newcastle get some serious offers from some of the other top clubs in Europe this summer. But anyway, I love Isak. He's been carrying me. And to be honest, if I didn't have Isak this week, I would be in a pretty poor position. So thank you to him. Thank you to the cheeky little assist from Garnacho off the bench. Thank you to Haaland for delivering. I would be surprised if I get a big red this week. With Gusto and Palmer still to play, I think I should end on probably a small green arrow. If Gusto does something big for me, it could be even more. That's how game week 33 went. Let me know down below, how many points did you get this week? Let's now take a look at free hit 34. So guys, in this first section, what I thought I would do before I actually show you my latest draft is look at all the players that I'm currently considering. We're not going to discuss each player in too much detail because we'll be doing that throughout the week in the game week preview, the deadline decisions, and my actual team selection video later the week, and also obviously on the deadline stream. But I thought I would just show you, this is actually a screenshot from my Google Sheets, which I often do when I'm free hitting and wildcarding. I just list all the players that I'm currently considering because it helps me to look at different combinations. And I think that's especially useful this week because for lots of us, we're like, we definitely want triple Arsenal, triple Liverpool. Once you pick those, the other players start falling into place. So I think this can be quite useful to do. Do let me know down below if you think I've missed anyone off. I will just say, and I'm sure I'll say this throughout the week as well, people are going to be like, your free hit draft looks like my normal team. Absolutely. And this is I said this in like game week 27. It doesn't matter what strategy you're on. Your team's going to look pretty similar to everyone else's every single week. My team in 29 looked like everyone else's free hit team. Your team this week probably will look like my free hit team. Equally, my team for game week 35 will look very similar to a lot of wildcard teams. I think we're all going to get to very similar teams at different points of the season. It would just be using different strategies. Some of you would have free hit earlier. Some of you will save the wildcard for later. Some of you would have taken hits earlier and won't have to take hits now. It really just depends on which strategy you employed. But I think for the large part, our teams will look very similar in 34. And I don't mind that. It's not the end of the world that my free hit doesn't look that different to your normal team. But these are the players that I'm considering. As I said, I think the key thing that most people will be looking at is, right, they want triple Arsenal, they want triple Liverpool. And I know people will say we don't want triple Liverpool now because they're not performing well. I obviously still want triple Liverpool. And I think that is kind of the first thing to decide. It's out of these Liverpool and Arsenal players, which ones do you want? Put them into your team and then build around them. So for Arsenal, I do think it's Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel if you're looking for defensive assets. I wouldn't be going for that left back spot. Zinchenko probably looks the most nailed, but I don't expect him to start both. And even if he does, it's probably not worth the risk. So I do think there is definitely justification to go for double Arsenal defence. At least one probably makes a lot of sense given how well they defend. Even against Villa, I know they did give up over 1 XG, but for large spells, they still defended quite well. I don't even actually think Raya made a save in that game. So I think they only conceded 2 or 3 shots in total. So I still feel like Arsenal defence makes a lot of sense. I would go for a combination of either 1 or 2 from there. And then really with the attackers, I do think it's Saka, Ødegaard or Havertz. Ødegaard did go off injured against Aston Villa, so we'll have to assess that. If Ødegaard's injured, maybe makes Havertz more nailed, but I think he'll almost definitely play in midfield if that's the case. And by the way, he played in midfield anyway against Aston Villa. But I think Havertz will be even more nailed if that's the case. I still think Havertz probably starts both in 34. But if Ødegaard's fully fit, he's normally more nailed than Havertz. So you've got that discussion there. Most people will want Saka. Do you go for the slightly more nailed minutes in Ødegaard, or do you go for the slightly maybe more explosive player in Kai Havertz? But I think you're going to want 3 of those players from Arsenal. And then for Liverpool, I think you've probably got 3 defenders that you can probably consider, which is Alisson. I've put Trent ? And you can see Trent's on the thumbnail. Very high upside, but is he going to start both? And then Van Dijk feels like the very solid one. And Van Dijk's got this reputation, and I don't even think it's a myth. I think he actually does. He seems to score in like every double game week. And I think we've got this sort of memory of Van Dijk of when we have a double and we pick him, he gets a bullet header. And again, he's very, very reliable for minutes. And then I think in the attack, you've got Salah, Diaz, Darwin. But with Jota being back and Gakpo's actually playing a little bit better at the moment, are Diaz and Darwin going to start both? I'm not so sure. Could you even go for a Jota? Maybe, but I don't think I'd be very sure about any of those attackers starting both. So do I want to have 2 Liverpool attackers that I think only start one game alongside Salah? Maybe not. And then McAllister, probably going to start both, but his data isn't as good. He's not on penalties unless Salah's off the pitch. And I feel like his upside is probably not quite as high as Diaz and Darwin, but you're going to probably get 180 minutes from him. So McAllister probably deserves more of a shout than I'm probably giving him. So from those 2 teams, you're probably going to want 3 assets from each. And I'll discuss in the next section the 6 that I've chosen at the moment, but I am going back and forth on it a lot. But I think there are some seriously good options from the other teams. And Crystal Palace is a team that in every single draft, I've had 3 of them. Not necessarily 3 in the starting 11, but I've had 3 filling out the 15. I think in defence, it's either go with Henderson because he makes a lot of saves, and Crystal Palace are very good defensively, by the way. I think they are now 5th across the season for non-penalty expected goals conceded at home. So they're very good, and they've got 2 home games, by the way, in GAMEWEEK 34. So please don't overlook Crystal Palace defence. It's a really nice double for them, both being at home. And I think if you don't go for Henderson, go for Munoz, or Munoz, who knows, as we call him on this channel. I think he's got the attacking threat, but you also will get the clean sheets too. You could even go for Mitchell, by the way. Mitchell's been a little bit more attacking in recent weeks, and he's obviously very nailed as well. Then with the attackers, you've just got Eze, Elise, Mateta. I think you could justify going for 1, 2, or maybe even all 3. And I know that sounds crazy, but they're not playing against 2 good defences. West Ham and Newcastle are not good defensively. So you could even go for all 3 of them. But Eze is probably the most nailed, and we think is probably on penalties ahead of Elise. So Crystal Palace, I would have at least 1 or 2 of them in your starting 11. Wolves, another team that I really like. The issue with Wolves is one of their games is Arsenal. And so if you look at that and you think, let's say we expect Arsenal to win 1 or 2-0, then you're basically looking at a Bournemouth game plus 1 or 2 points. And then you're like, oh, so you really need them to kind of do something against Arsenal potentially, or do very well against Bournemouth. But I think defensively, Jose Sarr could be an okay goalkeeper, makes a few saves. Ait Nouri, if he's fit, which we don't yet know, could be a decent option, but you might not want to risk that now. And then in the attack, I think you've got Hwang, but is Hwang going to start both? I'm not sure. Sarabia might not even start both now, but I would expect him to, but maybe his minutes are a little bit less secure. And then Cunha, oh, by the way, Cunha's first goal was outrageous in GAMEWEEK 33, but Cunha could be a seriously good option as well. We think Cunha could maybe still be on penalties, but to be honest, we have not seen a single pen for Wolves with Hwang, Sarabia and Cunha on the pitch. All 3 of them at various points have taken penalties. If you're a Wolves fan and you think you could predict, let me know down below. Or even if you're not a Wolves fan, do you think it's Hwang, Sarabia or Cunha? I've honestly got no idea, but one of them will be on penalties. If I pick Cunha, I suppose I hope it would be him. From Bournemouth, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh here, but I don't really like Bournemouth double. And I don't think there are many assets I'd want to go for. The defenders don't have the upside for me. Although Senesi, by the way, is back and he does have some attacking threat. But he also loves a yellow card. And I just don't love the double from a clean sheet perspective. So I think Neto would be the only one I'd go for save points. And then out of the attackers, I don't know who's going to start both. And even if Cliver or someone like that does start both, I think there are other good options that are maybe on pens and have maybe a better double. So for me, it's Neto and Solanke. Solanke is in most of my drafts, as you can imagine. But I think there's justification if you want to go risky, if you're really chasing rank. Solanke's going to be owned by pretty much everyone. You could go for someone like a different combination, like Cunha and Darwin, and just drop Solanke altogether. And I am considering that myself, but he is nailed on penalties, and he doesn't necessarily need the fixture Solanke. And he has been returning at a very consistent rate. So I still feel like Solanke is a good choice. From Everton, maybe, again, I'm being slightly harsh. I've actually only got 3 defensive options, which is Pickford, Mikolenko, and Tarkowski. The reason that I don't have any attackers is Calvert-Lewin's like a doubt. Beto, if he starts both, could be fine. Calvert-Lewin, if he started both, could be fine. But I don't know if either start both. And I also don't love the idea of an Everton attacker overly. McNeil, I suppose, could be an okay shout. Maybe deserves a place on this list. And Branthwaite obviously isn't on this list, but that's because Mikalenko and Tarkovsky have much greater attacking threat, at least numbers-wise, and you have unlimited budget pretty much on this free hit unless you go for Haaland. But even if you go for Haaland and Salah, you've probably still got a lot of money. So for me, it's just between Pickford, Mikalenko and Tarkovsky. Do I want to squeeze one of them in? They have Nottingham Forest and Liverpool. The Liverpool game, you're maybe not expecting that much, but from Forest, it is probably a pretty decent fixture on paper. So I like the idea of maybe having one of them. Then we get on to potentially what I might be considering one of the more differential aspects of the free hit, if you are trying to differentiate yourself from those that aren't free hitting, and that is Sheffield United. Because if you're not on a free hit, you're probably maybe not fully loaded up on Arsenal, Liverpool. You're looking to bring in Wolves and Crystal Palace assets, which obviously makes a lot of sense. But I do feel like there is maybe a spot for a Sheffield United asset. I've got Gerbic, but I would rather go probably for like a Pickford, Henderson, Raya, Allison. So I probably won't be looking at their defence. But in the attack, they've got Brereton, Diaz and McBurney. Now, money isn't an issue, so you don't need to go for them because they're cheap. But I think the price will actually put a lot of people off. Because you're going to have unlimited budget, I can see people just unnecessarily squeezing in more expensive assets because it feels weird having all of this money left over. Brereton, Diaz and McBurney have got seriously good data in recent weeks. Brereton Diaz in particular, his non-penalty expected goal involvement is through the roof. I'm actually going to discuss him in the next section. I'll read out some of his data because it's pretty outrageous. McBurney is on penalties, and his data outside of that's pretty good. But having spoken to some Sheffield United fans, and I've been having some discussions with fans from all of these teams already, they're not as sure about McBurney starting both, and his minutes haven't been fully secure this season, and even in the recent 3 or 4 game weeks, he was benched in one of them, whereas Brereton Diaz is basically playing 90 minutes every week. And if you haven't been watching Sheffield United, Brereton Diaz is playing OOP, so out of position. He's actually playing as a forward, but he's listed as a midfielder in FPL. So I feel like going for one or both of those, go for McBurney and you could get 1 or 2 penalties, and then you're laughing because I should have mentioned their double is against 2 of the worst defences in the league. They're playing against Burnley at home and Man United away. I would say on paper, the team with the best double this double game week is Sheffield United, probably followed by Liverpool. So I think there is a discussion to be had about whether we try and squeeze a Sheffield United attacker, which I never thought I would say, but maybe we'll look at that in the next section. So sorry for that rather rambly section, but I wanted to make sure that I discussed all of the players in a little bit of detail. Let me know down below if you think there's someone's name that I just haven't mentioned. I've probably forgotten about someone, but let's now take a look at my team, which I'm sure will change across the week, but my early draft ahead of the week, and discuss the players that I'm currently close to locking into my team. So guys, the moment you've actually been waiting for when you clicked on this video, which is my Game Week 34 free hit draft at the time of me recording, which again is Sunday evening. I'm sure I'll tinker throughout the week when we get updated news. And we obviously have the midweek games as well. We could get injuries to a lot of key players, which I'm not ever hoping for injuries. I should just note that. But it would definitely benefit free hits if there are injuries to key players like Saka. If Odegaard is injured, let's say Salah picks up a knock, those on free hit are going to be able to fully take on all of that information. So let's see what happens midweek. This could change drastically. But at the time of me recording, this is what I'm going with. Now, I normally do this. This probably looks really weird. This isn't my free hit team, obviously, in its entirety. Normally, I'd go through sort of goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards. But I thought I would start with Liverpool and Arsenal. Because like I said, I think most people, and some people will be like, I don't want Liverpool assets, I don't want Arsenal, they've not been performing, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to want 3 from Liverpool and 3 from Arsenal. So I feel like that is the first thing to decide. Yes, it's about combinations, right? Because if I don't go for a Liverpool defender, then I could go for one other defender and I'd have one less attacker, etc. But I almost feel like you should just say, right, I'm not picking any of my 15. I'm just going to pick 3 Liverpool, 3 Arsenal, because these are the 2 best teams that we have to pick from. They both have okay doubles and they have the best assets in FPL. So I don't think you should sacrifice any of your Arsenal, Liverpool players to try and squeeze in a player from one of the other teams. I feel like you should focus on these 6 and then build around them. Now, the decision that I think we basically have is to go double attack or double defense from each of these teams. I think it does make sense to probably have 1 defender and at least 1 attacker from each of these. Like, I wouldn't go triple Arsenal defense. For me, I don't think go triple Liverpool attack. I would try and have probably a bit of a balance. But then you've got the choice. Double Arsenal defence looks like it's been doing very well this season, but could you go for double attack? Absolutely. And I even think there's justification to go for 2 Liverpool defenders, despite the fact that obviously last few games they haven't defended very well, and actually just go for 1 Liverpool attacker. So I'm going to start with Liverpool. The reason I say I think double defense is more viable now than I would have previously said in comparison to double attack is actually to do with expected minutes and the players that have come back from injury. Right now, Jota is back. He's had minutes in 2 consecutive games off the bench. He's just a brilliant asset, and we know for a fact that Klopp trusts him, and Liverpool have not been performing well. On top of that, Gakpo's last 2 or 3 performances have been much, much better, and I still don't think Gakpo is even close to first choice. But when Gakpo's starting to look better, that then calls into question, could he get a start? Especially if, again, let's say that, I don't know, against Fulham, they look really poor again and they're struggling. Could we see him just mix it up and go for Jota and Gakpo against Everton? Absolutely. Now, I don't necessarily expect that. I don't expect Jota and Gakpo to start a Premier League game together. But could Jota get the Fulham game and Gakpo get the Everton game? Yes. And therefore, could I confirm to you that Diaz and Darwin start both, either of them in this double? No. So could you just completely ignore the Liverpool attack, go for Salah, and then go for 2 of Alisson, Van Dijk, and Trent? You absolutely could. And if we're looking at security of minutes, if you went Alisson, Van Dijk, Salah, I would be extremely, extremely shocked if you didn't get 6 starts, 2 from each of them, because they're just so nailed. Alisson now being back, as long as he doesn't get injured again, he will start every game. Van Dijk starts every game, and Salah will start every game. So security of minutes-wise, Alisson, Van Dijk, and Salah is a lovely triple-up. But I also feel like the upside isn't as high with them. Yes, Van Dijk loves a bullet header and a double, but his attacking threat this season hasn't been great. And Alisson, yes, he can make saves, but I just think there are some assets at Liverpool, like Trent, Luis Diaz, and Darwin, that just have so much more upside. So at the moment, I've sort of gone in a bit of a combination of all of those. Out of Diaz and Darwin, if I'm to select one, I just think Diaz is playing better at the moment. His data is slightly better than Darwin's. His minutes seem to be slightly better too. And I just think he is performing better. If you look at social media, and I know this isn't the best indication of what's going to happen in the future, even Liverpool fans are sick and tired of Darwin at the moment. I mean, there is so many calls for him to be dropped, especially when you've got Jota sat there, who is a very, very good finisher and will take his chances. I just have a feeling that Darwin's going to miss one of the next 2 Prem games. And I think Diaz probably does as well. But I feel like Diaz has more of a chance of starting both of them if I had to guess. So it's not that I'm picking Diaz because I think he's that much better than Darwin. I just think his expected minutes in my eyes are slightly higher. And I think it's more of a minutes game, this double, than it is picking the better players. I don't think there's actually much to separate the 2 of them, but I'm just about leaning Diaz at the moment. I don't think I want to go for both for the reasons I've just listed, which leaves me with 1 spot in the defence, which could be then Alisson, Van Dijk, or Trent. But like I said, I like chasing the upside. And the man on the thumbnail, Trent, is currently in my draft. But the reason for this, and the only way that I would actually lock this in, is because Bradley came off injured in game week 33 in the 48th minute. If Bradley is fully fit and available, and we get confirmation he's been back in full training, Trent will be Van Dijk. I will not go there for a second, because I don't see a world in which Trent starts both of those if Bradley's fit. Now, I still don't expect Trent to start both. And you might say, why on earth are you picking him if you don't expect him to start both? Because I think there's still a chance he does if Bradley's out. I think he could get like 60-60 or 60-70. I don't think he gets 19 either, but that's not a bad thing. We actually saw in game week 33 when Ben White went off early, he banked the clean sheet. So as long as he makes it to 60, Trent, I don't think it's a bad thing if he doesn't play 90 minutes. So I'm kind of banking on the fact he'll start 1 regardless. I think even if Bradley's fit, he starts 1, and Trent's got such high upside, and he could start 2. Not many people outside of the free hitters will be able to get there, and he's just got this ceiling that's just unbelievable. If he starts both, and if I told you he starts both and came away with 25 to 30 points in this double, you'd be like, wow, that's a great score. But I don't think anyone would be like, oh my God, I'm so shocked Trent got lots of points. He can do that. So yes, Liverpool haven't been defending very, very well. Trent's just come back from injury. He looked pretty stinky in game week 33 against Crystal Palace, and I don't expect him to start both. All of those things are true, but I still feel like there's some upside there with him. So there we go. At the moment, Salah, Trent, Diaz is my Liverpool triple up. I do think Van Dijk could make his way into my team, though, instead of Diaz or instead of Trent. Let me know what you think of that triple up down below. So then we move on to Arsenal. Saka's locked and Gabriel's locked unless we get information that we think they're a real doubt for game week 33, right? So Gabriel Saka's not leaving. That then leaves the 3rd spot between Raya, White, Saliba, Havertz, or Ødegaard. Lots of players to choose from. I'll start with Raya. Don't want him. Doesn't make enough saves. I think he's got a 12-point maximum ceiling, and I think there are plenty of other goalkeepers that will outscore him in game week 34. So for me, I'm not considering Raya. And then in the attack, Ødegaard came off with an injury. So for the time being, I'm not going to consider Ødegaard. But if he is fully fit and available, let's say plays against Bayern, looks fine, we think he's going to start both, I do probably actually slightly prefer Ødegaard to Havertz. And I know that will be controversial, but I just wonder, is Havertz going to keep starting every single game? Maybe he is. but I just wonder, could he get benched in one of Wolves or Chelsea? Especially if he then plays 90 against Bayern again. Like, how many games in a row is Havertz going to be able to play all of these minutes? So I feel like Ødegaard's minutes are more secure. The other thing I like about Ødegaard is I don't think Saka plays 90 in either of these. And when Saka's off the pitch, Ødegaard should be on penalties. So I like a lot about Ødegaard. It's not that I don't like Saka, but... Sorry, I don't like Havertz. But if Havertz is dropping into midfield as well, I think that weakens him as an asset. And even if he's playing as the 9, I still feel like Ødegaard in a single double game week, just in 2 games, could get close to Havertz. So I think I slightly, and I mean ever so slightly, prefer Ødegaard to Havertz. But at the moment, I've got neither of them, just because Ødegaard is an injury doubt, and Havertz, I'm not sure he starts both. And even if he does, I think there are other assets from other teams that could get close. Whereas with the defenders, I don't look at any of the defenders from any of the other teams and think clean sheet or even that much attacking threat. So I'm like, why not just back the best defense in the league? They are so good. And I know this is more template, right? On a free hit, we're looking at trying to maybe get one up on those that aren't free hitting. And everyone not on a free hit seems to have double Arsenal defense. But I also don't think it's a very good justification saying just because other people have double Arsenal defense, I'm not going to do it. They're that good that it makes sense to me. So I think Ben White or Saliba has a very good chance of making it into my team, sadly. As obvious as it is on paper, it still feels like probably the right move at the moment. So there we go. I've just spent almost 10 minutes talking only about Liverpool and Arsenal, but I think they're the key spots in our free hit draft. So at the moment, White, Trent, Gabriel fills out my defence from those 2 teams. And then 3 of my 5 midfielders is Salah, Saka and Luis Diaz. So that's the 6. Let's now look at all of the other players and look at how I've finished out the rest of my draft. So guys, I just thought I'd just show you the rest of the players. We'll discuss each of them one by one and why they're currently in my team and maybe other players that might make their way in before the deadline. So starting with the goalkeepers, I've got Henderson and Pickford. I would be extremely shocked if these aren't my 2 goalkeepers. The only other one that I've considered briefly is probably Alisson, if I weren't to go for Trent or Van Dijk, or I wanted a double up and I only wanted to go with one of the defenders and a goalkeeper. Alisson could come in for me. But I just think I'm more likely to go for either 2 attackers or Trent and Van Dijk and then still go for a different goalkeeper. The reason I like Henderson is with goalkeepers, and this sounds like an obvious point, but we have to reinforce it, they get points for saves and clean sheets. And whilst clean sheets get you more, right? 3 saves gets you 1 point, whereas a clean sheet gets you 4 points. So a clean sheet's more important than saves. The way to get those big scores is both. You will not get lots of bonus points without making the saves, and you will not get loads of bonus points without the clean sheet. You need saves and clean sheets. And what Henderson has is he makes a lot of saves, and also he's playing for a team that can keep clean sheets. Like I said, Palace are very underrated defensively, especially at Selhurst Park, and they are playing at Selhurst Park for both games in 34. So I like the idea of Henderson because I think he ticks every single box that you'd want from a goalkeeper. I do think Pickford's great, but I don't like the fact that one of Pickford's games against Liverpool. I am fully aware, before someone says it, Henderson just kept a clean sheet against Liverpool, but I don't expect that for Everton. So I just think Henderson for me edges it at the moment, but I do really like Pickford still. And maybe if I decide to get Munoz into my team, or maybe I want to go for more Crystal Palace attackers, maybe Pickford does make his way in for me. Then in the 2 midfield spots that I have left outside of Arsenal and Liverpool assets, I've got Eze as the first one, or Eza, as commentators seem to call him. I'm pretty sure, I don't think that's how you say his name. But anyway, let's say Eze. I just love Eze. I've always loved Eze. And I actually love Crystal Palace, by the way. For some reason, they're just a team that I've always enjoyed. And I know they don't always play the best football, but I've just got a bit of a random soft spot for Crystal Palace. So I'm excited to have Eze in the team. He's been a player that I've wanted to own for large parts this season, when he was fully fit, even at the start of the season. And I just didn't quite have the opportunity to do so. Great underlying data. On penalties, his minutes feel very secure. And I like the fact that he's playing 2 at home. Now, I should just rewind a bit. Maybe on penalties. Elise did take a penalty when Eze was on the pitch earlier in the season, but I think there's some confusion around this. Eze was just coming back from injury, I believe, and I think he came on in like the 89th minute, and the penalty was in like the 90th minute. It was something like, basically, when the penalty was won, Eze had literally been on the pitch for like a minute, whereas Elise had been on the pitch the whole game. So I don't think it would have made much sense to let a player that's just come onto the pitch take a penalty. Or it could genuinely be, maybe Elise is ahead of Eze in the pecking order. Maybe he is the penalty taker. Sadly, we don't know that. Now, the reason that I mention that is I'm also tempted by Eze and Elise, not just for the penalties reason, although that is an advantage that if you have both of them, you're guaranteed to have the penalty taker for Crystal Palace. But Elise, I think he played something like 65, 70 minutes in game week 33. So he's now got a start. Before that, he came off the bench. I don't know that I could confirm that he starts both in 34, but I think there is a good chance that he does. And I think the worst case you'll get is like 70, 80 minutes, then like 30 minutes. So I think you're probably looking at a minimum, assuming he stays fit, of like 110 minutes for Elise. And therefore, I think he is someone that is worth considering on a free hit. Because again, I think if you're not on a free hit, and the reason I say this is that's the comparison point, right? You want to gain on those that aren't. Everyone, I think, pretty much everyone, will have the opportunity to bring in one midfielder, and they'll probably go for Eze for security of minutes. So Elise is the player that you could have that could allow you to get one up on those that aren't free hitting. So Eze and Elise as a double up deserve some consideration. But for now, I've just got Eze in there. And then the differential punt. Now, I say differential, I'm seeing more and more people talk about him, but again, I expect him to be well under 10% ownership. Even if everyone's talking about him, and even if loads of people on free hit still pick him, we are still talking about a player that, for the large database of players that are playing this game, they're not going to have Brereton Diaz. Right, now I'm just going to move over to the official site just to show you some of this guy's data, because I know it sounds like a random pick, right? Firstly, the fixtures, Burnley at home and Man United away, they're exceptional fixtures, right? I'm not picking him for a really difficult double just for the sake of being different. That is the best double game week of the bunch in 34. So on the website, by the way, you can look at expected goal involvement. It's this little one here. So this tells us basically how much of a chance they've had for attacking returns. The reason I like Brereton Diaz, 1.52 against Fulham. And this man isn't on penalties, by the way. So 1.52 against Fulham. Then he had 0.55 against Chelsea. I know he didn't do great against Liverpool, but it's Liverpool, right? They are good defensively for the most part. 0.55 against Chelsea. 0.53 against Brentford. He's getting a lot of opportunities, right? And even earlier in the season, there was some, like here, first game, 0.61. He's a player that can and will get opportunities. And the other thing that I like about him is I think he's top quality. I think he's the player that if he gets the opportunities, he will take a lot of them. I don't think he's a technically poor player. You know, like some players, you're like, yeah, they're getting loads of opportunities, but they're not going to take them all. So I like the data that I'm seeing from Brereton Diaz. I like the fact that he's getting very good minutes, right? 79, 90, 62, 90, 90. Again, having spoken to some Sheffield United fans, they seem to think that he is the most nailed attacker that you can get. And so I just wonder, is there the opportunity to go for a Brereton Diaz in there? Or a McBurney, but McBurney's minutes seem a little bit less secure. I suppose the issue that you've got with Brereton Diaz in that spot is that he's competing with not only Elise, not only Hwang, not only all of the other players that you might want to go for in that spot, if you want to go for an Erdegaard rather than double defence, all of these great players, he's also competing with all of the forwards as well, because you could play a 3-4-3, right? So I'll discuss in a second, I've got Cunha, Solanke, Mateta. I can only play two of them. So rather than playing Brereton Diaz, I could get Mateta off the bench. If not Mateta, there's still Darwin as well. You could even go for Erling Haaland too. So with Brereton Diaz, he's fighting with a lot of really, really good options for that place in our team. He's almost my 11th player at the moment. So I love him. I'm not saying that I think I'm going to take him out, but there is a chance that someone else does sneak in there before the deadline. I'd love to know what you think of him as a pick. Do you think it's just bonkers going for a Sheffield United player? Or do you look at that and think Burnley and United will concede chances? Maybe it is a nice differential option. The forward line is actually the place that I think I'm struggling with the most. Like, though, obviously the Liverpool and Arsenal discussion is quite difficult. The midfield's not easy, but this forward line, because I'm going for a 3-5-2, I think there's largely four forwards that I'm looking at, and I can only have two of them. And I think that's Cunha, Solanke, Mateta, and Darwin. Now, I'll rule out Darwin for the time being because I like Diaz, Salah, and Trent. I even like Alisson and Van Dijk too. So unless, I don't know, maybe if Darwin's rested against Atalanta and Diaz gets 90 or something, maybe I look at that and just think, oh, do you know what? A fully rested Darwin, maybe I want him back. In that case, maybe he comes back in. But let's say that I choose not to go with Darwin. It's then Cunha, Solanke, and Mateta. Solanke's a tough one because, again, this feels like an opportunity to go against those that aren't free hitting. But I don't want to do this just for the sake of it. But loads of people are going to have Solanke. Free hit or not, Solanke's going to be close to 100% EO. So definitely the protective and safe players to have Solanke in there. But if he doesn't do anything and the other forwards do, that's a massive win that you could have there. And I don't love this double. Villa have started, at least against Arsenal, they looked a little bit better, although Arsenal had the opportunities. I don't think Villa's defence is as bad as it was a few weeks ago. I think they're starting to string together. We saw it in Europe as well. I think they're starting to look a little bit more solid defensively. So I don't think that's a great fixture. And then Wolves, I still don't think are an awful defence. Now, I'm not saying for a second that I don't think Bournemouth will get opportunities, but I don't even look at this overly as a double and say I love it, especially both being away. But it's also not a bad double. There's not a fixture there where you're like, there's definitely no chance Solanke returns. And also Solanke's on penalties, talismanic, great data. So I think I'm almost overthinking it slightly, looking to go away from Solanke. So he's been in most of my drafts, Solanke, and I expect him to stay there. Which then means if I stick with this 3-5-2, it's Cunha or Mateta. Cunha has the chance of being on penalties, although at the moment we don't know whether that's Sarabia, Hwang or Cunha. And he's got 2 home fixtures, which I love. The issue is, like I said, that Arsenal fixture, I've got double Arsenal defence. I'm not expecting them to get many opportunities. And so if he doesn't get many opportunities against Arsenal, let's say he gets a 2-pointer, it's basically a single game week plus 2 points. I think I'd back Erling Haaland to outscore him. So why am I picking him if I think that Arsenal will do really well against Wolves? Right? It's almost a single game week. And then that's when I think, do I just get Mateta into the team? Mateta, I think there's going to be a bit of a price bias against him. Let me just switch back over to the FPL site to have a look at his data. There's going to be a bit of a price bias against Mateta because he's so cheap. But price shouldn't come into it at all, right? Just pick the best player. He got 1.14 XGI against Liverpool. He had 1.2 against Luton, 0.89 against Burnley. My issue with Mateta is he always so goes through really like stinky spells. So you can see here, 0.06, 0.28, 0.1, 0.4. Mateta has the ability to just drop a couple of stinkers. He's not very consistent with his data. But what I do like about a player, like by the way, look at this spell here. This is my issue. 0.1, 0.04, 0.01, 0.2, 0.05. Like, these XGI numbers are awful. But more recently, he's strung together a few pretty decent performances. And I love the fact that it's 2 home fixtures. And he's playing against 2 very weak defences, as I said when I was talking about Eze. So I do just wonder, is Mateta just better than Cunha for this double? If Cunha's not on penalties, probably, but there is the possibility that he is. And also, Cunha looked so good in game week 33. It's obviously not a decision I need to make right now, but I would love to know down below, if I could only have one of Cunha or Mateta, who do I go for? Or like I said, I just drop Brereton Diaz as the other option. I go for a 3-4-3, and my front 3 is Mateta, Cunha, and Solanke, which maybe on paper, again, is slightly better, but I quite like the idea of a fun punt on Brereton Diaz. So there we go. I've also got 8 Nuri and Mikalenko on the bench. Doesn't really matter at the moment. We'll discuss a little bit later in the week the sort of best, cheaper defenders to go for. I do like the idea of having an Everton and a Wolves defender in there, though, as backup. So there we go. Let me know what you think of the draft down below. As you can see, currently predicted to get 122 points, according to Fantasy Football Hub, which I would actually absolutely love. And also, let me know how many players you differ from this, whether you're on free hit or not. I think a lot of our teams will be very similar, but it will just be about those Arsenal and Liverpool combos and then a few differential players. So guys, there you have it. That is my first free hit 34 video of the week. I'll have a team selection video later in the week, as well as some other videos, even if you're not on free hit 34. So don't stress about that. If you did enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button. And if you've watched to this point and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.